Disclaimer: this story is based on real events but may contain dramatized elements for narrative purposes. Viewer discretion is advised. Names and identifying details have been changed to protect privacy. I was 12 the first time I realized something was wrong. Not the kind of wrong you can explain right away, but the kind that slowly creeps in and sits heavy in your chest. My dad and I used to be close, really close. He was the kind of dad who never missed a soccer game, who made pancakes on Sundays, who'd tuck me in and say, "You're my little man." And I believed it. I believed everything he said because he was my hero. But heroes aren't supposed to lie. And they definitely aren't supposed to break families. It started with small things, late nights that turned into early mornings, business trips that didn't make sense, a weird kind of silence between him and Mom that even a kid could feel. I remember one night I was watching TV alone, and I heard the front door open quietly. It was 2 a.m. I thought it was a burglar at first. But then I saw him. My dad. Trying to sneak in like he didn't belong in his own house. I didn't say anything. Not that night. Not the next. I told myself it was nothing, that maybe I was overthinking things. But deep down, something had shifted. It wasn't just about him coming home late. It was how he looked, guilty. Like someone who had been somewhere he wasn't supposed to be. Weeks passed. Then months. And then came the day that changed everything. It was a Saturday afternoon. My mom had gone out for groceries and left me and Dad home alone. I was upstairs playing video games when I heard his phone ring downstairs. At first, I ignored it. But then it rang again. And again. The same name. A name I'd never seen before. I went downstairs, thinking maybe it was important. Maybe someone was in trouble. But when I picked up his phone, the message popped up. It wasn't just a call. It was a photo. And a heart emoji. From someone named Lena. I remember my hands shaking. I didn't want to see more. But I couldn't stop myself. I opened the chat. The messages were intimate. Loving. The kind of things you say to someone you're not just friends with. My stomach dropped. That was the moment my childhood ended. When he came back into the room, I didn't say a word. I just handed him his phone and walked away. He didn't ask what I saw. He didn't deny it. And that silence? It was louder than any screaming could have been. From that day on, everything between us changed. He tried to act normal. He still made pancakes. Still smiled like nothing had happened. But I couldn't look at him the same way. Because now I knew something I could never unknow. My dad, the man I looked up to, was living a lie. And I was holding the secret. I didn't tell my mom. Not because I wanted to protect him. But because I didn't know what would happen if I did. Would it destroy our family? Would she leave? Would I lose both of them? I carried that secret for years. It became a weight on my chest, something I couldn't talk about but could never forget. Every time he hugged me, I felt it. Every time we laughed, it was there in the back of my mind. But the truth has a way of finding cracks to slip through. And one day, years later, it did. What happened next was something I never saw coming. Something that changed not just my relationship with him, but with myself. But that is a part of the story I'm not ready to tell just yet. For a long time after that day, I tried to act normal. I went to school, did my homework, played video games with my friends. On the outside, nothing had changed. But inside, I was carrying something I didn't know how to deal with. I started to look at my parents differently. Every time my mom laughed at one of my dad's jokes, I wondered if she had any idea. Every time she made him coffee in the morning, I wanted to tell her to stop. I wanted to say, he doesn't deserve it. But I couldn't. I didn't have the words. Or maybe I was just scared of what would happen if I said them out loud. The hardest part was pretending. Pretending I didn't see what I saw. Pretending I didn't know about the messages, the photos, the late-night calls. Sometimes I'd hear him whispering in the hallway or see him walk outside to take a phone call. And I'd just sit there, frozen, trying not to feel anything. Because feeling something meant dealing with it. And I wasn't ready for that. It messed with my head in ways I couldn't explain. I started avoiding him. I didn't want to go on drives with him anymore. I didn't want to sit at the dinner table and listen to his stories about work. Every word he said felt fake. Even when he was being kind or funny, I couldn't believe it. Because I knew who he really was when no one was watching. But there was another layer to it that made everything worse. He wasn't just cheating on my mom, he was dragging me into it without saying a word. I became his silent witness. The one person who knew and wasn't supposed to. And that made me feel trapped. Guilty, even. Like somehow, just by knowing, I was part of it. And then, slowly, I started picking up on more signs. My mom would ask him things like, "Where were you? I called you twice." And he'd always have an answer. "Traffic," he'd say. Or, "My phone died." Sometimes he'd be too quick to answer, too calm. Like he'd practiced it. My mom never pushed it. Maybe she believed him. Or maybe she didn't want to believe anything else. But I knew. I saw the way she looked at him when she thought he wasn't looking. I saw the tiredness in her eyes. Like maybe deep down, she felt it too. There was one night that stuck with me. We were all sitting in the living room, watching a movie. Something about a broken family trying to heal. Halfway through, my mom got up and left the room without saying anything. She didn't come back. My dad acted like he didn't notice. But I did. And I hated him for it. I hated how easily he could pretend nothing was wrong. Like none of this was happening. After that, I started to keep track. I'd look at his phone when he wasn't around. I'd watch for that name, Lena. Sometimes it was there. Sometimes it wasn't. But it always came back. And the messages got riskier. He started sending voice notes. I never listened to them. I couldn't bring myself to. Just seeing them was enough. I started to wonder who she was. Was she someone from work? Someone he met at the gym? Did she know about us, his real family? Did she care? I thought about telling someone, maybe a teacher, or my best friend. But every time I tried to say the words out loud, they got stuck in my throat. How do you say something like that when you're just a kid? Who would believe you? And even if they did, what would they do? The secret started changing me. I became quieter. Angrier. I'd snap at my mom for no reason. I'd ignore my dad even when he tried to talk to me. I could tell he noticed, but he never asked why. Maybe he didn't want to hear the answer. Maybe he thought if we didn't talk about it, it would go away. But secrets don't go away. They grow. They eat at you. And the longer you keep them, the heavier they get. And the worst part? This secret wasn't even mine to begin with. But now, it owned me. And it was only a matter of time before something broke. After a while, the silence between my dad and me turned into something permanent. We still spoke, but it was surface level, past the salt. Did you do your homework? Just enough to keep up the act. But inside, I was drowning. Every time I looked at him, I saw someone I didn't recognize. And every time I looked at my mom, I felt like a traitor. She was kind, always asking me if I was okay, always checking in. I'd lie every time and say I was fine. But I wasn't. I was carrying the truth of a betrayal she didn't even know existed. Things at school got harder. My grades dropped, and I started getting into arguments with teachers. I didn't care about anything anymore. I couldn't focus. My mind was always stuck at home, stuck on what I'd seen and what I was still seeing. I became more withdrawn. My best friend, Armin, noticed something was off. One day he asked me straight up, "Is everything okay at home?" I opened my mouth to say something, to maybe finally let it out, but I couldn't. I just shrugged and changed the subject. Because how do you explain that your dad is cheating, and you know it, and no one else does? One night, I overheard a conversation I wasn't meant to hear. My parents were in their room, voices low but tense. I pressed my ear against the door. My mom was asking questions, where he'd been, why he was acting different. My dad kept his tone calm, saying things like, "You're overthinking," and "It's just work stress." But there was something off in her voice. Like she didn't believe him anymore. Like she was holding on by a thread. After that, something in her changed. She stopped smiling as much. She'd sit at the kitchen table longer than usual, staring at her tea like it had answers. She became quieter. I think she started noticing the cracks too. But the weird part was, my dad didn't even try to hide things anymore. He'd still step out for late-night calls. Still disappear for a few hours without explanation. And Lena's messages? They kept coming. It was like he thought no one would ever find out, or worse, like he didn't care if we did. I began to wonder if Lena even knew about us. Maybe she thought he was divorced. Maybe he told her some story about being stuck in a bad marriage. I thought about messaging her from his phone. I even typed something once, "Do you know he has a wife and kid?" But I couldn't press send. I was scared it would blow everything up. And maybe, deep down, I wasn't ready for that. Not yet. The worst moments were the ones where he still acted like the perfect dad. He'd bring home my favorite snacks, or ask if I wanted to go for ice cream. Part of me wanted to say yes, just to feel normal again. But the other part, the bigger part, was angry. Because how could he pretend everything was fine when he was the one who broke it? I kept hoping it would stop. That maybe one day, I'd check his phone and there would be no messages. That he'd choose us again. But deep down, I knew that wasn't going to happen. This wasn't just a mistake. This was a choice. One he kept making, over and over. And no matter how hard I tried to ignore it, the truth was always there. And eventually, it would come out. Everything finally started to unravel the day my mom found a receipt in my dad's jacket pocket. It was for a dinner at a fancy restaurant we'd never been to, just 2 people on the bill. No business name, no group. Just 2 expensive meals and a bottle of wine. I was sitting on the couch when she walked in holding it. Her face was pale, eyes wide like she'd seen something she couldn't process. She didn't say anything at first, just stared at the paper in her hand like it was going to speak to her. I watched from the other side of the room, frozen. I knew what that receipt meant. I knew exactly who that second dinner was for. And I knew this was it, the moment I'd been dreading for years. The truth wasn't hiding anymore. It was standing right there in her hands. That night was different. Tense. Silent. My mom didn't talk. My dad acted like he didn't notice anything was off. He just went about the evening like it was any other. But I could see it. She was done pretending. Her eyes followed him like she was putting pieces together in real time. Later that night, I heard a door slam. Their voices exploded behind the walls, my mom demanding answers, my dad stuttering through excuses. It was like every lie he'd told was crumbling, and I could hear it happening. Every word they shouted made my chest tighter, like something inside me was breaking too. I sat on the floor in the hallway, knees pulled to my chest, listening to the storm that I knew was coming for a long time. But then it happened, my name. I heard my mom say my name. Loud. Accusing. Hurt. And I knew in that moment, she knew I had seen something. She knew I had known. And I didn't know what hurt more, his betrayal, or the fact that now, she saw me as part of it. And just like that, everything I had been trying to protect was about to explode. The next morning, the house was completely silent. No arguments, no movement, just this heavy stillness hanging in the air. My dad had left early, probably to avoid facing either of us. My mom didn't come out of her room for hours. I didn't know what to do with myself. I kept replaying her voice from last night, how she'd said my name, how it cut through the walls like a knife. It wasn't just shock in her tone. It was betrayal. Not from him, she already had that. But from me. Like I had let her walk blind into this whole thing while I stayed quiet. I thought maybe I could fix it. I told myself maybe I'd explain everything, just come clean and finally let it out. But then something happened that changed everything. That afternoon, while my mom was still upstairs, I heard a knock at the door. It wasn't loud, just soft and quick. I opened it, and there she was, Valina. I didn't even know what she looked like until that moment. But the second I saw her, I knew. She wasn't some stranger. She wasn't a secret fling from another city. She was someone we knew. Someone who used to come to our house. She was my dad's old friend from college, and my mom's old friend too. She looked surprised to see me, like she hadn't planned for that. She smiled awkwardly and asked, "Is your dad home?" My stomach dropped. I just shook my head, unable to say a word. She didn't leave right away. She hesitated, like she wanted to explain something, or maybe convince me this wasn't what it looked like. But it was. It was exactly what it looked like. And in that moment, everything got worse. Because this wasn't just about infidelity anymore. This was betrayal stacked on betrayal, family, friendship, trust. And all of it was falling apart fast. The door had barely closed behind Lena when my mom came downstairs. Her eyes met mine, and before I could say anything, she asked, "Who was that?" I froze. I didn't want to answer. But something in me broke, and I finally said it. It was her, Mom. The one Dad's been seeing. Her face went blank. No anger, no tears, just a kind of quiet disbelief that was worse than any screaming. She didn't speak for a long time after that. Just stood there, processing, connecting all the missing pieces. And then, without a word, she picked up her phone and called my dad. She didn't yell. She didn't beg. She simply told him not to come home. "You've already left," she said. "You just forgot to take your things with you." That night, it was just the two of us in the house. We sat on the couch, side by side, not talking. It wasn't peaceful. It wasn't over. But it felt like we'd crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. The truth was out. The affair, the lies, the betrayal from someone she once called her friend, it was all out in the open now. But just when I thought things couldn't twist any deeper, my mom turned to me and said, "There's something I never told you." Her voice cracked, but she kept going. "Your dad, he wasn't the first." For a second, I didn't understand. But then it hit me, she had her own secret. Her own betrayal buried in the past. And suddenly, everything I thought I knew about my family wasn't just broken, it had never really been whole to begin with. I didn't ask her to explain. I just sat there, trying to breathe through the weight of everything. My parents had been hiding from each other, from themselves, maybe even from me, for years. And now, it was all out in the open. The affair, the betrayal, the secrets that stretched deeper than I ever imagined. It didn't make what my dad did okay. But for the first time, I saw them both as just people. Flawed. Hurt. Lost in ways I couldn't fix. In the days that followed, things shifted. My dad moved out. My mom focused on herself more, therapy, journaling, quiet walks alone. We didn't talk about Lena again. We didn't need to. That chapter was closed, even if the scars stayed. And as for me, I started talking more too. Not to my parents, but to someone who'd listen. My school counselor became that space. Somewhere I could finally breathe without pretending. The biggest lesson I took from all of this? Secrets grow in silence. And the longer you hold them in, the heavier they get. What my dad did was wrong. But staying quiet didn't protect anyone, it only hurt more. Families aren't perfect, and sometimes love breaks in ways we can't undo. But truth, even when it's painful, gives us the chance to rebuild from something real. So yeah, this was my family's story. A story of infidelity, secrets, and the silence that nearly tore us apart. But also a story of finally facing what's real. No more pretending. Just honesty. Even when it hurts. 1.